Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Crystal?
Indeed, we do. There is a lot to talk about this morning. So as we previewed for you last night, a just utterly disastrous attempt to launch his presidential campaign for Ron DeSantis last night on Twitter had a bit of a better outing on Fox. We've got some of the highlights of that, so we will bring you that as well and discuss the whole situation. We also have the reaction from Donald Trump, who, of course, is not going to let him get off easy for any of the missteps and disastrous technical glitches that he suffered through along with Elon Musk. We also have some big updates this morning for you on debt ceiling negotiations. Kevin McCarthy saying they are getting close to a deal. We will see. We also wanted to take a look, we're a year out from Uvalde. Who has been held accountable? Very few of the officers that stood by as kids were literally bleeding out in those classrooms. So we'll take a look at that. And also, listen, you called it in particular, but we both called it.
We'll get to that.
In terms of who actually was behind those drone strikes in the Kremlin. Lo and behold, 3 weeks later, U.S. intelligence agencies are saying, well, it was Ukraine, but Zelensky didn't have it. He didn't have any idea.
Never has any idea.
Yeah, he's just totally in the dark there about what's going on. Also excited to have Skanda Amarnath on to talk about the debt ceiling and what the Treasury could do. Before we get to any of that, though, thank you so much to our new premium subscribers. You are helping us so much to build out this new set. Pieces of it are starting to arrive. Actually, the monitors showed up last week. Exciting.
I did not know they even made monitors this big. It is the biggest television I've literally ever. I saw the box and I was like, how was this delivered? Literally in an 18-wheeler. So yeah, it's getting pretty exciting. Things are cool. We're only 2 weeks out or so from when we began the initial build and then the debut. So if you guys can help us out, breakingpoints.com. We've been in communication with the RFK Jr. campaign, the Marianne campaign, Vivek Ramaswamy, Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, the Trump campaign, all of these people. All of them have expressed interest on coming on the show and scheduling specifically on the new set. So that's what you guys are enabling and helping us to do. The set is definitely a great selling point, if you will, in terms of getting them in here and sitting down for a long conversation. So if you like that format, if you want to continue that, breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber today. But let's go ahead and get to DeSantis. By the way, I also have sent a message to the DeSantis campaign and still waiting on a callback.
Yeah, they've been in touch. It may be hard to get Ron.
We'll see.
On,
Rob.
But we put in our request, and his team is interested in coming on panels and things like that.
Yeah,
so
we'll see. Yeah. All right.
Okay, so let's start with what exactly happened last night as we previewed for you. He made the unusual decision, Ron DeSantis did, to launch his campaign on Twitter Spaces. Well, apparently, I'd never used Twitter Spaces before, but apparently the platform is beset with issues under the best of circumstances. When you add in, more than 500,000 people trying to join to listen to what the man had to say, it ended up being an utter catastrophe. They went 25 minutes of the thing crashing and people not being able to get in and no one being able to be heard and various hushed whispers on a hot mic before they pulled the plug on the original Spaces. Ron DeSantis left altogether. They had to launch a new one before they could even get to the substance of what his campaign announcement was. We have a little taste of what that all sounded like last night. Take a listen.
I'm pleased to introduce two individuals who've done more to loosen the grip. All right, sorry about that. We've got so many people here that I think we are kind of melting the servers, which is a good sign.
So they just keep crashing, huh? Yeah, I think we've got just a massive number of people online, so it's servers are straining somewhat. All right, we're just reallocating more server capability to be able to handle the load here. It's really going crazy.
And I think we melted the internet there.
Yeah, that was insane. Sorry, we actually doing this from David Sax's Twitter account because it looks like doing it from mine basically broke the Twitter system.
Governor DeSantis, are you there? Can you hear us? I think you broke.
I'm here.
I know. I think you broke the internet there. We had over 500,000 people in one Twitter space, and it was growing by like 50,000 a minute. So, congrats on breaking the internet there.
Well, yeah. Try some new things. You're gonna.
Yes.
It's adventurous. So
yes.
Okay, so we did an entire 20-minute video yesterday breaking down not only the launch, but one of the reasons why I thought it was a huge mistake to actually do that as a launch, because it was plotting, it was long, it was scripted, there was no production to it. I just think he would have been 10 times better off putting out a traditional Twitter video, which he did at exactly 6 p.m. Eastern last night, and then doing the damn rally of which you control the optics, all of it. We would have covered it. The networks would have covered it. He gets to control the elements. That's the produced piece of content, which then could be rolling on every single screen this morning. Unfortunately for him, that's not what happened. And ironically, I hate being in the business of praising cable news, but you know, at the very least, like their stuff doesn't break constantly. And DeSantis sat for a long interview, live interview with former Congressman Trey Gowdy on the Fox News Tonight Show yesterday around 8 p.m. Eastern. And honestly, it was way better. Not only was it not beset of glitches, there was more of a pacing, not only to his answers, but to the questions themselves.
Yeah.
They delved into quite a bit of territory. The first and foremost was actually a question I was begging them to ask on Twitter. I was like, hey, electability, how are you going to beat Trump? DeSantis lays out his case of electability here. Here's what he had to say.
Are there policy differences, or is it more about electability and how you would implement those policies, even if you agree on them?
Well, why now? I think it's because the country's going in the wrong direction. We have another 4 years of the Biden administration. I think some of the damage is going to be irreversible. Why me? Well, I think what we've been able to do in Florida is two things. One, we've had unprecedented policy success. All the things that we believe as Republicans or as conservatives for many, many years, we've been able to take those values and those principles and actually turn them into reality.
Do you plan on participating in all the debates? And would you have a word of counsel for any candidates that were maybe equivocating on whether or not to participate in all the debates?
I think we should debate. I think the people want to hear it. You know, I grew up blue collar, working minimum wage jobs, and learned nobody's entitled to anything in this world, Trey. You've got to earn it. And I think all of us have to go out and earn it. That's exactly what I intend to do. And I think the debates are a big part of the process.
Couple big takeaways. So on a meta level, his message to GOP primary voters is Trump said it, I will actually do it. Florida is booming, open for business. Nobody has entitled to it. You have to earn it. So overall, I actually think those are, you know, decent, compelling points. The question is that compelling to enough of the GOP primary base?
Well, and it's also an argument that sits very uneasily with the disastrous launch that he had.
That's true.
Because if your case is he tweets about it, I get it done, and then you're unable to even effectively get done your own campaign launch. And not just the technical glitches, which, you know, he should have foreseen. They should have been asking some really hard questions to make sure this platform was up to snuff. But also, you know, audio sounds like crap on Twitter. It always sounds like crap on Twitter Spaces. People, you know, I can say this as someone who people complain about my voice being annoying. His voice is annoying too. So if you just have the audio and you don't have music and staging and visuals and everything to back it up, it's a very hollow and sort of, it really makes you appear smaller. He was like a panelist in this conversation, and he just read his like standard stump speech.
That's why it was a mistake.
So, you know, if your core pitch, which I think there are two problems with the electability and I'm the guy that can get it done pitch, which is number one, it's not clear to me that that's what the GOP base is really after. But number two, they also are already not convinced that you're more electable than Trump. In that Harvard-Harris poll that came out just this week, voters were divided in the Republican primary about who was actually going to be more likely to defeat Joe Biden. So you already are not really having a strong case there on electability. And then when you have these kinds of disastrous issues on your campaign with your very first start, which were foreseeable, then, you know, that you're going to take a hit there. And by the way, you're up against a guy in Donald Trump who is going to make you pay for every mistake. Honestly, if it was just the media being like, you know, mocking DeSantis for this, I think he could overcome that because I think voters, especially in the Republican base, are very skeptical. They hate the media. If you're getting attacked by the media, maybe that's a good thing. Donald Trump is not going to let you get off easy. And the other thing that I would say, putting the technical glitches aside, on the substance and the contrast between DeSantis and Trump, Trump is hitting DeSantis on wanting to raise taxes, on wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare. It is largely a very bread and butter focused attack. DeSantis, it's no accident that his strongest base of support in the Republican Party is among college-educated voters because he fixates on these, you know, ESG and DEI and the Chevron defense these things that are, important to some sliver of the Republican base. But most people are just trying to know, like, what are my taxes going to be? And am I going to be able to survive? And are you going to get inflation under control? So I think Trump has also staked out a much more effective position in terms of the actual substance of the issue set that he's focused on.
I agree. And that's another reason why I thought that the Fox interview was better, is that here he actually did have an answer on the economy and specifically tried to speak to the bread and butter, the kitchen table issue. Here's what he had to say.
So you need to spend less money. You also need to expand domestic energy production. Energy costs contribute to inflation. We have an abundance of resources here that this president doesn't want to use. So we will reverse Biden's energy policies very quickly. But we also need a Federal Reserve that's going to focus on maintaining a stable dollar.
So he's going after the Federal Reserve specifically for printing money, which is an interesting attack because that's the second time. He brought it up at the very end of the Twitter Spaces. I thought it was interesting to see this new political candidate come out specifically against the Fed and kind of combining it with the Biden message.
Yeah.
Now, will that work? I'm actually not so sure. I don't think most people know how the Fed works at all.
It's kind of esoteric.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, we talk about it a lot here. So I'm not saying the Fed isn't an important issue. God knows it is. It's one of the most important issues in terms of how our economy is actually doing. But the way that you talk about that has to be accessible. And if you're going into esoteria about how the Fed functions and, how they contribute to the stability of the dollar and what, people are not directly connecting that to their lives and their ability to make ends meet at the end of the month. And so, again, I think it's no surprise that he has found his strongest base of support among college-educated Republicans who have the luxury, who are more affluent and have the luxury of worrying about these niche concerns over, if there's ESG backing in their portfolio and what's going on with colleges and some of the sort of super online lingo that Ron DeSantis casually threw around about cryptocurrency and these sorts of concerns that were casually thrown around, in particular in the Twitter Spaces. And Elon Musk also is the patron saint of that part of the Republican base. So, I think you saw, even putting the technical glitches aside, some of the challenges and hurdles that DeSantis has to overcome in this primary.
Yeah, I agree. This is why it's difficult, because I'm like, yeah, I actually care a lot about those issues, but I'm not an idiot, and I would never run on them if I was running for Congress, right? So it's one of those where we can both think that issues and areas are important and understand their salience to overall voters and what they look at. And I think that is, in my estimation, one of the bigger miscalculations on what he chose his time to focus on. Now,
he's just way too online.
Yeah, and
that's the bottom line.
In terms of the political interest, now in terms of what political may come for backlash for him, his answer on abortion will likely be one of the most important answers that he gave. So let's go ahead and roll this. Whenever he was asked about abortion on Fox, here's what he had to say.
Well, I've been proud as governor to stand for a culture of life, and I think all Republicans need to do that. As you alluded to, we were able to sign legislation protecting unborn child with a detectable heartbeat. And we think that that's a humane thing to do. And it's similar to what Governor Reynolds did in Iowa. And I applaud her for that. Dobbs returned the issue to the elected representatives of the people. And so I think that there's role for both the federal and the states.
Strategic shout out there to the governor of Iowa. I'm sure he just plucked her name out of a hat and said, yeah, this one governor, we're just going to go ahead and make sure. So not an idiot there. But overall, we have shown you here before, while in a primary it may not matter, it will certainly matter in the general election. The other answer, we're not going to play it for everybody, but it was on Ukraine. And this actually kind of gets to what you're discussing, Crystal. And this is actually just more of a training issue. He was specifically asked by Trey Gowdy, what are you going to do about Ukraine? And his answer was, our military has become too politicized. We need to get away from focusing on woke issues, back to commitment. I'm going to increase recruitment. Oh, and in terms of what's going on in Eastern Europe, I would like to see a settlement. I'm like, dude, he asked you specifically about Ukraine. What specifically do you think? Trump, look, I mean, it's certainly a talking point, but Trump is like, I want the dying to stop, and I'm going to try and bring it to an end within or he says, I will bring it to an end within 24 hours. He has absolutely floated negotiation and basically everything on the table. Do you agree with the leading candidate for president? Like, what is your differentiated? Do you have the same position on Ukraine? Do you have a different position on Ukraine? Like, what do you think about what's going on right now?
Yeah, the abortion answer, you note there, he says, I think there's a role for state and federal, which I actually think, listen, in a GOP primary, his abortion position is no problem. If anything, it's an asset.
Right.
And he thinks that, he can get to the right of Trump on a handful of issues. He also talked a lot about COVID in the Twitter spaces. I don't know if that came up as much in the Trey Gowdy interview, but he's still trying to hang his hat on Florida's COVID policies, which of course are popular in a Republican primary. I just think people have really moved on from that issue. It had a lot more salience, a year or a year and a half ago. So that's one piece. On abortion, again, I think it's fine for him in a Republican primary. It does kind of dent his electability case, and it has made donors, some donors, very uneasy about backing him because, look, they don't care about the issue of abortion per se, but they do care about whether this man is going to be able to win the White House, and they've seen what a potent issue this has become for Democrats. Ukraine is sort of the same deal. He has a challenge here to navigate because what the donors want to hear on Ukraine is different from what the base wants to hear. That's why he, instead of taking that question head on from Trey Gowdy, he went into his side, his pet issue of like wokeness, which he applies to literally everything, and then gives this one little sort of safe practice line at the end in order to actually answer the question that Trey Gowdy was asking. And it's because he's in a difficult position trying to put together the coalition that he needs to be able to win. And Ukraine is one of the issues where that coalition is most divided.
I agree. And also in terms of Fox, they were actually very salty about being snubbed by DeSantis because he did his announcement there and not on Fox. So they took their opportunity to go after Elon pretty hard. Go ahead and put this up there on the screen. They said that they were aggressively hyping, much hype presidential DeSantis. A disaster on Twitter was the headline on Fox. And then go to A7, guys.
And they have a picture of Elon there, not even Ron DeSantis. And the caption says amateur hour. So
amateur hour.
Not good.
Go to the next one, and you can see that the banner that was actually on foxnews.com during the Twitter Spaces was, if you want to hear what actually hear and see Ron DeSantis, tune into Fox News at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So look, I'm not in the business of cheering on cable news. I wish for their demise, but if you're going to come at the king, you best not miss. And I think there certainly was a miss whenever it came to this. Overall, I think it's like you said, Crystal. It remains to be seen. So we are going to talk a little bit about his plans and all that, but in terms of the headlines for the candidate, it was bungled, just simply because I've checked every single outlet, save for the New York Post, is talking about the issue with the launch. And listen, the way that I've heard some of the response from the pro-DeSantis people is like, yeah, but if you listen to his answers, like they're great on policy. It's like, what are you, an Elizabeth Warren fan now? Like, seriously, like this is serious Warren vibes, like in terms of, oh, but he's so good. Listen, I care a lot about the policy. Like you said, I care a lot about ESG. I care a lot about DEI, but I'm not gonna say that I'm sit here and I'm the prototypical Republican voter, because I'm not out of touch. And I think that was the issue, is that people are transposing like themselves into how this is gonna play with people who have they don't follow politics day in and day out the way you and I do. Or even frankly, if you listen to this show every day, you're in the top 1% of political media consumption. The vast majority of people are just like, huh? Just saying, oh, like a Florida guy, it's like, that's just not really how it all lands. So remember that things that may seem normal to you are really not normal at all whenever you hear them, whenever you hear them outside of that vacuum of the internet.
It's a very wine track candidacy. And even putting the glitches aside, if you listen to the substance and the content of what they were focusing on, which was overwhelmingly not bread and butter issues, it was the culture war issues that, he has used to make a name for himself, no doubt. You can see why this has appeal to the audience that it does within the Republican base. And you can also see why that appeal has been limited. Now, I think there continues to be a lot of affection for the man within the Republican base.
No question.
I think no one here is like writing him off, like it's over for him and that's the end of the story. You never know. These Republican primaries are long. But you only get one chance to have this focus on your campaign, and it's when you launch, and you can control every aspect of it. And candidates spend a lot of time and a lot of money thinking about what this is going to look like, what they're going to present to the public, exactly what they're going to say, how they're going to message it. And it was the whole thing was a horrific conception from the start, which does call into question his judgment. I think there's no doubt about it. So, on the sort of overall takeaway here, I think you don't get the bump in the polls that even a Nikki Haley got with her campaign launch. And there's also a lesson here, maybe for all of us, of you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a reason why candidates launch the way they do, because it's effective. He didn't raise nearly as much money as they, I'm sure, thought he was going to raise.
It was about $1 million an hour, which is not bad, but as you and I know, a lot of these are prearranged donations.
Right. He was, and this is also painful, he went straight from his various appearances to a fundraiser at the Four Seasons Hotel in Miami. Donors were sitting there listening to this whole thing unfold on audio before he shows up at the fundraiser. So yeah, he had a lot of this lined up. For a top candidate like this, $1 million is really not that impressive. And they went on Twitter Spaces from having, with the original one that they had to bail out of, having over 500,000 people listening to having half of that at its peak when they were able to actually ramp it up and get the thing going again. You just don't get those chances over again. You don't get this moment where the media is completely focused on you and hanging on your every word and analyzing what you're doing. You just don't get those moments back. So is it a campaign ender? No. Is this a real blow for him at a time when he was already kind of struggling in the polls? There's just no doubt about it.
That's the way I would put it.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.